Aliens thought. They understood war. Then the Deathworlder fleet showed up. The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for over 3,000 cycles. Their understanding of warfare was precise, calculated, and civilized. Ships engaged at maximum range with energy weapons, following strict protocols that minimized casualties and preserved valuable resources. Wars were won through superior technology and tactical positioning, not through brutality or desperation. Admiral Zethkar of the Hegemony Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. 12 worlds had fallen to their forces in the past cycle, each conquest following the same predictable pattern. The enemy would position their vessels in defensive formations, exchange fire at long range, and eventually surrender when their shields failed and their ships were disabled. "Admiral," his tactical officer, Commander Velnari, announced with her usual monotone efficiency, "we are receiving surrender signals from the Catherian Defense Fleet. Their primary vessels have sustained critical damage to their propulsion systems." Zethkar nodded approvingly. The Catherians had lasted longer than expected, nearly 6 hours of engagement, but the outcome had never been in doubt. The Hegemony possessed superior shield technology and more efficient energy weapons. Mathematics dictated victory. "Transmit the standard occupation terms," he ordered. "Their industrial infrastructure is to remain intact. We need those manufacturing facilities operational within 2 cycles." As the Catherian ships powered down their weapons and assumed surrender positions, Zethkar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Another world would join the Hegemony's growing empire. Another species would contribute their unique technologies and resources to the collective whole. It was the natural order of things. The strong dominated the weak, but in a civilized manner that benefited all. The bridge's communication array suddenly crackled with an unknown signal. Commander Velnari's antennae twitched with confusion as she studied her instruments. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the edge of the system. The signal pattern doesn't match any known Galactic Council protocols." Zethkar's scaled brow furrowed. "Unknown vessels?" "Affirmative, sir. Sensor readings are unusual. The ships appear to be constructed from primitive metals rather than standard crystalline composites. Energy signatures are inconsistent with recognized power core designs." Before Zethkar could respond, the main view screen flickered to life, displaying the image of a being unlike any in the Council's databases. The creature had pale skin, small eyes, and a disturbing lack of natural armor plating. Its mouth moved in patterns that suggested complex vocal communication. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Defense Force," the creature announced in perfectly translated Galactic Standard. "You will immediately cease your attack on the Catherian Republic and withdraw your forces from this system." Zethkar felt his throat sacs inflate with amusement. "I am Admiral Zethkar of the Hegemony 4th Fleet. You appear to be unfamiliar with proper diplomatic protocols. This system now falls under Hegemony jurisdiction. Your vessel is advised to depart before you suffer the same fate as the Catherian fleet." The human's expression remained unchanged, but something in its eyes suggested a predatory patience that made Zethkar's instincts whisper warnings he chose to ignore. "Admiral Zethkar," the human continued, "I'm giving you one opportunity to reconsider. The Catherian Republic has signed a mutual defense agreement with the Terran Colonial Union. Your attack on their sovereign territory constitutes an act of war against humanity." Commander Velnari's instruments chimed with new data. "Admiral, I'm detecting additional contacts, multiple ships emerging from... They appear to have been hiding in the asteroid field's sensor shadow." The tactical display updated, revealing dozens of vessels surrounding the Hegemony fleet. The ships were crewed by Galactic Council standards, angular hulls covered in weapon emplacements, with no apparent concern for aesthetic design or energy efficiency. They looked more like mobile weapons platforms than proper warships. Zethkar studied the display with professional interest. Primitive stealth technology. Impressive for a species not yet inducted into the Council. How many vessels? 47 confirmed contacts, with more emerging every few seconds. Admiral, their energy readings are concerning. These ships appear to carry significantly more armament than their size should allow. The human admiral continued speaking from the view screen. Admiral, your ships are now surrounded. I'm ordering you one final time to withdraw your forces and release the Catherian vessels from custody. You have 60 seconds to comply. Zethkar's amusement deepened. These creatures clearly didn't understand the reality of their situation. The hegemony fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 4 dreadnoughts, each equipped with shields that could withstand hours of concentrated fire from conventional weapons. Even if these primitive vessels possessed some crude nuclear weapons, they couldn't possibly pose a serious threat. Unknown species, he replied formally. You appear to misunderstand the tactical situation. Your vessels are outnumbered and outgunned. I suggest you withdraw while retreat remains possible. The human's expression shifted slightly, and Zethkar caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold. It wasn't fear or uncertainty. It was the look of a predator that had just confirmed its prey was trapped. Admiral Zethkar, the human said quietly, you're about to learn why humans are classified as a Deathworld species. The transmission ended, and for a moment, the bridge fell silent. Then Commander Velnari's voice cut through the quiet with barely controlled panic. Admiral, the human vessels are moving to attack positions. Their weapon systems are powering up, and the energy readings are... This can't be correct. Zethkar moved to the tactical station, studying the sensor data himself. The human ships were indeed generating enormous amounts of energy, far beyond what their primitive construction should allow. More concerning was their movement patterns. They weren't forming the standard long-range engagement formations favored by civilized species. Instead, they were closing distance rapidly, their courses erratic and unpredictable. Raise shields and prepare for long-range engagement, he ordered. Target their largest vessels first. Once we disable their command structure, the remainder will surrender according to standard protocols. The hegemony fleet responded with practiced efficiency. 16 massive warships turned their main batteries toward the approaching human vessels and opened fire. Brilliant lances of energy crossed the void, each shot carrying enough power to cripple a standard frigate. The human ships didn't even slow down. Direct hits on multiple targets, Commander Velnari reported. Her voice steady despite the impossible readings on her instruments. Admiral, their ships are absorbing the energy discharges. Minimal damage detected. Zethkar felt the first flutter of genuine concern. Impossible. Increase firing rate and focus on individual targets. The hegemony weapon systems cycled faster, pouring concentrated fire into the human formation. Still, the alien vessels continued their advance, their hulls glowing with absorbed energy, but showing no signs of significant damage. Admiral, his communications officer announced, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship. Admiral Chen's image reappeared on the view screen, her ship now close enough that individual weapon emplacements were visible on the hull. Zethkar counted at least 50 separate gun batteries on the vessel's forward section alone. Admiral Zethkar, she said calmly, you've just made a critical error in judgment. You assume that because our technology appears primitive, we must be weak. You're about to discover the difference between elegant warfare and human warfare. Before Zethkar could respond, the human ships opened fire. The first salvo wasn't energy weapons or exotic particles. It was solid projectiles, fired from electromagnetic accelerators at significant fractions of light speed. The metal slugs punched through the hegemony shields like they weren't there, tearing into hull plating and internal systems with devastating effect. The Eternal Dominance shuddered under multiple impacts. Damage reports flooded in from across the ship, primary power conduits severed, shield generators offline, weapons systems damaged. "How is this possible?" Zethkar demanded. "Their weapons are using primitive kinetic energy." Commander Velnari studied her instruments with growing horror. "Admiral, the projectiles are moving at 0.3 light speed. The kinetic energy involved... Our shields are designed to deflect energy weapons, not absorb physical impacts at these velocities." The human fleet continued its advance, now close enough that Zethkar could see the individual scorch marks on their hulls from the hegemony's energy weapons. The damage was superficial. The humans had apparently armored their ships with materials designed to absorb and disperse energy attacks. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "Maintain distance and continue firing." But the human ships were faster than they appeared. Their engines burned with chemical rockets and fusion drives, systems the Galactic Council had abandoned centuries ago in favor of more efficient gravitic propulsion. The primitive technology allowed them to change direction and velocity far more rapidly than the elegant hegemony vessels. A group of smaller human ships broke from the main formation, accelerating directly toward the hegemony flagship. Zethkar watched in disbelief as they approached on collision courses. "They're attempting ramming attacks," Commander Velnari reported. "Admiral, those ships are going to impact us directly." "Destroy them," Zethkar ordered, but even as his weapons targeted the approaching vessels, he knew it was too late. The first human ship struck the Eternal Dominance amidships, its hull packed with high explosives that detonated on impact. The blast tore a massive hole in the flagship's side, venting atmosphere and debris into space. The second impact followed seconds later, and then a third. Throughout the fleet, similar scenes played out as human ships either rammed hegemony vessels or closed to point-blank range to deploy weapons that seemed designed for one purpose: maximum destruction with no regard for the elegance of warfare. "Admiral," Commander Velnari's voice was barely audible over the sound of alarms and emergency systems, "we're receiving surrender demands from the human fleet." Admiral Chen's image appeared again on the cracked view screen. Behind her, Zethkar could see human crew members working with efficient brutality, their movements suggesting a species evolved for violence rather than civilization. "Admiral Zethkar," she said, "your fleet is disabled. Surrender now, or we'll demonstrate why humans don't take prisoners when their allies are threatened." Zethkar looked at his tactical display. Half his fleet was either destroyed or severely damaged. The human ships continued to circle like predators, their weapons trained on the surviving hegemony vessels. In less than 30 minutes, these primitive Deathworlders had accomplished what should have been impossible. "I surrender," he managed, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "Wise choice," Admiral Chen replied. "You'll be released with your surviving crew and ships. Carry this message back to your hegemony. Humanity is now in this war, and we fight very differently than you're used to." As the human ships took control of the system and began organizing rescue operations for both hegemony and Catherian casualties, Zethkar realized that everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about warfare had just become obsolete. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they brought with them a form of combat that civilization had forgotten: total war, fought not for conquest or resources, but for survival and the protection of allies. The galaxy would never be the same. Aliens thought they understood war. Then the Deathworlder fleet showed up. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of Admiral Zethkar's return to hegemony space. Representatives from 43 species gathered in the vast crystalline chamber that had hosted diplomatic discussions for millennia. Never before had a session been called to address the complete tactical defeat of a major fleet by an unknown species. High Counselor Drak Thul, ancient leader of the Vorthon Republic, called for order as the assembly buzzed with nervous energy. His 6 eyes focused on Admiral Zethkar, who stood in the center witness circle, his once pristine uniform now bearing the scorch marks of battle. "Admiral," Drakthul's voice resonated through the chamber's acoustic amplifiers. "Present your report to the council." Zethkar straightened his shoulders, though the gesture did little to hide his humiliation. "High Counselor, esteemed representatives, I bring urgent intelligence regarding a species that calls itself humanity. They possess military capabilities that challenge our fundamental understanding of warfare." A ripple of skepticism passed through the assembly. Counselor Yerental of the Crystalline Collective leaned forward, her translucent features reflecting the chamber's ambient light. "Admiral, your initial report suggested primitive technology. How does a pre-council species defeat one of our most advanced fleets?" Zethkar activated the central holographic display, showing tactical recordings from the battle. The assembled representatives watched in growing silence as human ships absorbed energy weapons fire and responded with devastating kinetic bombardments. "They armor their vessels with materials designed to disperse energy attacks," Zethkar explained. "Their weapon systems prioritize raw destructive power over efficiency. Most concerning, they demonstrate complete willingness to sacrifice their own ships and crews to achieve tactical objectives." Defense Counselor Vexmar of the Hegemony Military Command studied the recordings with professional interest. "These ramming attacks, this is barbaric. No civilized species would waste resources in such a manner." "That's precisely the problem," Zethkar replied grimly. "They don't fight like a civilized species. They fight like predators." High Counselor Drak Thul raised one clawed hand for silence. "Admiral, what intelligence did you gather regarding their overall military capabilities?" "Limited, sir. They claim to represent something called the Terran Colonial Defense Force, which suggests a larger political entity. Their technology is crude but effective. Most importantly, they've formed a military alliance with the Catherian Republic." This statement generated immediate discussion among the representatives. The Catherians were a council protectorate species recently integrated into galactic civilization. Their strategic location along major trade routes made them valuable, but their military capabilities were negligible. Counselor Velshira of the Trade Consortium voiced the concern many were thinking. "If these humans are willing to intervene on behalf of a minor protectorate, what other alliances might they be forming?" Before anyone could respond, the chamber's communication array activated. A human face appeared in the central hologram, replacing the tactical recordings. The assembled representatives fell silent as they studied the alien features: small eyes, soft skin, no visible natural weapons or armor. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," the human spoke in perfect council standard, "I am Secretary General Martinez of the United Earth Government. I apologize for the interruption, but recent events require immediate diplomatic attention." High Counselor Drak Thul's 6 eyes narrowed. "Unknown species, you have violated Council protocols by accessing our secure communications. This is an act of aggression." Secretary General Martinez smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both polite and threatening. "High Counselor, we've been monitoring your communications for some time. Your encryption systems are quite elegant, but they have obvious weaknesses when approached from a different technological perspective." The implications of this statement sent a chill through the assembly. If the humans could penetrate Council communications, what other capabilities did they possess? "We're broadcasting this message to inform the Council that the United Earth Government has formally established the Terran Colonial Union, encompassing 37 human colony worlds and 14 allied species. As of today, any attack on our member species will be considered an act of war against humanity. Counselor Yerintal activated her speaking crystal. Secretary General, the Galactic Council maintains jurisdiction over this region of space. Your union has no legal standing under established interstellar law. With respect, Counselor, Martinez replied, we've reviewed your legal frameworks. They're quite comprehensive for species that share your philosophical approach to conflict resolution. However, humanity operates under different principles. High Counselor Drakthul leaned forward, his ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries. What principles might those be, human? Self-determination, mutual defense, and proportional response. When our allies are attacked, we respond. When our colonies are threatened, we defend them. When our civilians are harmed, we retaliate. Martinez paused, his expression growing serious. Your species appears to view warfare as a diplomatic tool for territorial acquisition. Humanity views warfare as an existential necessity for protecting what we've built. Defense Counselor Vexmar stood, his massive frame imposing even through the holographic display. Human, you speak of retaliation and defense, but your forces attacked unprovoked. Admiral Zethkar was conducting a legitimate occupation operation under Council authority. Counselor, Martinez's voice remained calm, but something cold entered his expression. The Catherian Republic is a sovereign nation that requested our protection. The moment your fleet opened fire on their vessels, you declared war on the Terran Colonial Union. Admiral Zethkar is fortunate we allowed his surviving crew to return home. Admiral Zethkar activated his speaking privilege. Secretary General, your forces demonstrate concerning disregard for the established rules of engagement. Ramming attacks, suicide tactics, weapons designed solely for destruction rather than disabling. These methods are uncivilized. Martinez turned his attention to the Admiral, and Zethkar felt the same predatory focus he'd experienced during the battle. Admiral, let me explain something about human military doctrine. We've spent our entire evolutionary history fighting for survival on a world that actively tried to kill us. We've fought each other, our environment, disease, starvation, and extinction events. When we finally reached the stars, we brought that experience with us. The human leader gestured, and new images appeared in the holographic display. Massive industrial complexes, shipyards, and what appeared to be entire planets converted into manufacturing centers. This is the Terran Colonial Union's industrial capacity, 300 billion humans across 47 star systems, supported by 14 allied species with their own manufacturing capabilities. When you attacked the Catherians, you didn't just engage a single fleet. You declared war on the largest military-industrial complex in this region of space. Counselor Velshira studied the industrial data with growing alarm. These production figures, they're impossible. No species can maintain such resource allocation without economic collapse. That's because you're still thinking like civilized species, Martinez explained. You build beautiful, efficient vessels designed to last for decades. You fight wars to acquire territory and resources with minimal damage to valuable infrastructure. Humans build weapons designed to destroy enemies as quickly and completely as possible. We don't fight wars to acquire territory. We fight wars to eliminate threats. High Counselor Drakthul activated the chamber's security protocols, ensuring their conversation remained confidential. Human, what exactly are you proposing? Simple, High Counselor. The Galactic Council can continue to operate as it has for thousands of years, regulating trade, resolving diplomatic disputes, and maintaining order among civilized species. Humanity will protect its allies and colonies through whatever means necessary. As long as Council members don't threaten human interests, we can coexist peacefully. Defense Counselor Vexmar's crest flared with indignation. You cannot simply declare independence from galactic law. Counselor, Martinez replied quietly, We already have. The question now is whether the Council wishes to test humanity's resolve through military action or establish diplomatic relations with the Terran Colonial Union as equals. The chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed this ultimatum. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained order through superior technology and overwhelming numbers. Now they faced a species that seemed immune to both advantages. Councillor Yerental's crystalline features pulsed with nervous energy. What guarantees do we have that humanity will respect Council sovereignty? The same guarantees the Council offers its members, Martinez replied. As long as you don't attack our allies or threaten our colonies, humanity has no quarrel with the Council. We're not interested in conquest or expansion at your expense. We simply want to be left alone to develop our own civilization. Admiral Zethkar stepped forward. Secretary General, your military capabilities are concerning, but the Council commands resources from dozens of species. A prolonged conflict would be devastating for all parties. Martinez nodded grimly. Admiral, you're absolutely correct. A war between humanity and the Council would devastate both sides. That's why I'm hoping we can reach an understanding. He gestured again, and the display showed a star map with clearly marked boundaries. This is the Terran Colonial Union's current territory and our projected expansion zones for the next century. We're willing to formally recognize Council authority outside these boundaries in exchange for recognition of our sovereignty within them. High Councillor Drakthul studied the proposed borders with ancient eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. Your expansion zones encompass several systems already claimed by Council members. Those systems contain established human colonies or species that have requested our protection. The Council is welcome to verify these claims through independent investigation. Martinez paused, his expression growing serious. However, any attempt to remove human colonists or our allies through military force will result in immediate retaliation. The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every representative in the chamber understood the implications. Humanity was offering coexistence, but on their own terms. Councillor Velshira voiced the question everyone was considering. What happens if we refuse? Then the Council will discover why humans are classified as a Death World species, Martinez replied simply. We've survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and global wars. We've weaponized everything from sharpened sticks to antimatter. If the Council wants to test our resolve, we're prepared to demonstrate exactly how a species fights when extinction is the alternative to victory. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. High Councillor Drakthul looked around at the assembled representatives, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their expressions. Esteemed colleagues, he said finally, we face an unprecedented situation. For the first time in our history, we must decide whether to accommodate a species that rejects our authority or risk a war against an enemy that may not fight by any rules we understand. As the debate began, one thought echoed through every mind in the chamber. The galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place. Aliens thought they understood war. Then the Deathworlder fleet showed up. 3 months after the diplomatic ultimatum, the Galactic Council faced a crisis that threatened to tear apart 3 millennia of civilized order. The vote on whether to recognize the Terran Colonial Union had divided the Assembly into 3 distinct factions, each pushing for drastically different approaches to the human problem. The militarist faction, led by Defense Councillor Vexmar and supported by the Hegemony Military Command, demanded immediate action. They argued that allowing humans to dictate terms would encourage other species to challenge Council authority. Their solution was simple: mobilize the combined fleets of the Council and crush human resistance before it could spread. The diplomatic faction, headed by Trade Councillor Velshira and backed by species dependent on interstellar commerce, urged negotiation and compromise. They pointed to the massive economic disruption a war would cause and the potential for humanity's industrial capacity to benefit all council members through trade relationships. The isolationist faction, surprisingly led by High Counselor Drakthul himself, advocated for complete withdrawal from human space. They argued that the galaxy was vast enough for two separate civilizations and that forcing contact would only lead to unnecessary conflict. The debate had raged for weeks, but the decision was taken out of their hands when emergency alerts began flooding the Council communication networks. "High Counselor," Admiral Zethkar's voice crackled through the emergency channel. "We have a situation developing in the Zerion system. Multiple human fleets are massing near the border." Drakthul activated the chamber's tactical display, showing real-time intelligence from Council surveillance networks. The sight that greeted the assembled representatives defied their worst expectations. Over 400 human vessels had gathered in the Zerion system, representing the largest military concentration anyone had seen since the ancient wars that established the Council. The ships ranged from massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapon systems to smaller vessels that analysis suggested were troop transports. "How is this possible?" Counselor Yerental whispered, her crystalline features pale with shock. "Our intelligence indicated humanity possessed perhaps 50 major warships." Admiral Zethkar's image appeared in the display, his expression grim. "High Counselor, we've been monitoring human industrial output since our first encounter. They've been producing warships at an unprecedented rate, approximately 12 new vessels per standard cycle. Their entire civilization appears to be mobilizing for war." Defense Counselor Vexmar activated his speaking privilege, his massive frame radiating aggression. "This proves humanity's true intentions. They're planning a preemptive strike against the Council. We must act immediately." Before anyone could respond, the Chamber's communication array received an incoming transmission. Secretary General Martinez appeared in the central hologram, but his expression was markedly different from their previous encounter, colder, more focused, carrying the weight of inevitable conflict. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he began without preamble, "I'm contacting you to inform you that the Terran Colonial Union has discovered evidence of a planned military operation against human colonies." High Counselor Drakthul leaned forward, his ancient voice carefully controlled. "Secretary General, the Council has made no decisions regarding military action. With respect, High Counselor, our intelligence suggests otherwise." Martinez gestured, and the display showed intercepted communications between various Council species. "We've been monitoring your diplomatic channels, military communications, and intelligence networks. 3 Council members, the Hegemony, the Skarn Empire, and the Vorthak Confederacy, have been coordinating fleet movements toward our borders." The revelation that humans had penetrated multiple levels of Council security sent a chill through the assembly. Admiral Zethkar stepped forward, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Human. Such intelligence gathering constitutes espionage against sovereign governments. This is an act of war." Martinez turned his attention to the Admiral, and Zethkar felt that familiar predatory focus. "Admiral, you attacked our ally without provocation. You've been planning further military operations against human colonies. From our perspective, we're already at war. We're just deciding how to fight it." The human leader paused, allowing the implications to settle before continuing. "However, I'm here to offer the Council one final opportunity for peaceful resolution." Defense Counselor Vexmar's crest flared with indignation. "You mass 400 warships on our borders and speak of peace?" "Counselor," Martinez replied quietly, "those 400 ships represent less than 12% of the Terran Colonial Union's current naval strength. We're demonstrating our capabilities, not deploying our full military potential." The silence that followed this statement was profound. Council intelligence had estimated total human military capacity at perhaps 200 vessels. If Martinez was telling the truth, humanity commanded over 3,000 warships. Trade Counselor Velshira activated her speaking crystal, her voice trembling slightly. Secretary General, such a fleet would require resources beyond any single species' capacity. Counselor, you're thinking like a council member again, Martinez explained patiently. You maintain beautiful capitals, elegant ships, and efficient production systems designed for peacetime prosperity. Humans have converted entire star systems into military production facilities. We've militarized our civilian population. Every human colony contributes to our war effort because every human understands that survival depends on collective defense. The display shifted, showing images of human industrial complexes that staggered the council representatives. Entire planets had been converted into shipyards, manufacturing centers, and resource extraction operations. The scale of mobilization suggested a species preparing not just for war, but for total war. "This is madness," Counselor Yerental whispered. "No species can maintain such military expenditure without economic collapse." "That's because your species have never faced extinction," Martinez replied simply. "Humans have, multiple times. We understand that luxury and comfort mean nothing if you're not alive to enjoy them." High Counselor Drakthul studied the industrial data with the wisdom of millennia. "Human, what exactly are you proposing?" "Simple recognition of reality, High Counselor. The Terran Colonial Union exists. We're not going away. We're not going to submit to Council authority. The only question is whether we coexist peacefully or fight a war that will devastate both civilizations." Martinez gestured, and the display showed a detailed star map with clearly marked boundaries and proposed trade routes. "This is our final offer, formal recognition of the Terran Colonial Union as a sovereign political entity, with guaranteed non-interference in our internal affairs. In exchange, we'll establish formal diplomatic relations, open trade agreements that will benefit both sides, and provide military assistance against any external threats to galactic stability." Defense Counselor Vexmar stood, his massive form radiating hostility. "And if we refuse?" The human's expression shifted, and suddenly every representative in the chamber understood why their species was classified as apex predators. "Then, Counselor, you'll discover what total war looks like when fought by a species that evolved on a death world. We won't fight for territory or resources. We'll fight for the complete elimination of any threat to human survival." The display changed again, showing tactical projections that made several counselors recoil in horror. Human strategy didn't involve capturing territory or preserving infrastructure. It involved the complete destruction of enemy military capabilities through overwhelming force. "Our first strike will target every Council military installation within 50 light-years of human space," Martinez continued with clinical precision. "We'll use kinetic bombardment, antimatter weapons, and directed energy strikes to eliminate your fleet concentrations before they can coordinate a response." Admiral Zethkar studied the projections with professional horror. These tactics would result in massive casualties. "Admiral, your species started this war when you attacked our ally. If the Council chooses to escalate, we'll finish it using methods your civilized minds can't comprehend." Martinez paused, allowing the threat to sink in before his expression softened slightly. "However, we'd prefer to avoid such devastation. Humanity has no interest in ruling the galaxy or displacing existing civilizations. We want to build our own society, protect our allies, and contribute to galactic stability. The choice is yours." High Counselor Drakthul called for a brief recess, and the Council representatives huddled in urgent discussion. The debate was swift but intense, with each faction presenting their arguments with desperate urgency. When the session resumed, Drakthul spoke with the weight of his ancient authority. "Secretary General, the Galactic Council requires guarantees regarding human expansion and military activities." "High Counselor, We're prepared to formalize our territorial boundaries and commit to non-aggression treaties with all Council members. We'll also establish joint commissions for resolving future disputes through diplomatic means. What about species that request human protection? Any species that formally requests membership in the Terran Colonial Union will be welcomed, provided they meet our standards for democratic governance and individual rights. We won't force our alliance on anyone, but we'll defend our members absolutely. The final vote was closer than expected, but pragmatism eventually won. The Galactic Council formally recognized the Terran Colonial Union as a sovereign political entity, establishing the framework for coexistence between two fundamentally different approaches to civilization. As the diplomatic formalities concluded, Admiral Zethkar approached High Counselor Drakthul privately. "High Counselor, do you believe we made the right decision?" The ancient leader studied the tactical displays still showing human fleet positions. "Admiral, in 3,000 years, the Council has never faced a species willing to sacrifice everything for survival. These humans fight like the universe is trying to kill them, because from their perspective, it always has been." Drakthul paused, his 6 eyes reflecting the wisdom of ages. "We chose coexistence over extinction. Whether that proves wise will depend on whether humanity can learn to live in peace." 6 months later, the first Joint Council Human Trade Mission departed for the Xerion system, carrying diplomats, scientists, and merchants eager to explore the possibilities of cooperation between species that had discovered war could be avoided when both sides understood the alternatives. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Deathworld species didn't fight for conquest or glory. They fought for survival. And when survival was at stake, they would use any method, sacrifice any resource, and overcome any obstacle to protect what they had built. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they had made it clear that they intended to stay.